Representative Anderson, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
I want to start with the interim. This interim, typically it's not as busy, but you've been pretty busy with, among other things, hearings about management and security issues at US Bank Stadium. Have you had any time to relax?
You know, the Capitol is a place that never rests. It's like New York City.
As for the home of the Vikings, do you think the state is heading on the right track, fixing some of the issues, or does more need to be done?
You know, I think that there's more that needs to be done. We have the piece of legislation that was passed by the House and the Senate, and the Conference Committee was signed. I think that there's just some safeguards that we need to have in place. I'm happy the current management has been very willing to work with us about some of these concerns, but we can't just rely on who's there currently. You have to plan ahead for any situation of any kind of leadership that's in place to make sure that we're protecting this asset for the citizens of Minnesota.
And you've chaired the House State Government Finance Committee for 3 years. What do you foresee the committee addressing in 2018?
You know, it all depends upon what happens with the budget forecast in February. I think we'll have a better inkling of what that means, especially now that the feds are passing the tax bill on the federal side. That will have implications for us here on the state side. So once we get that February forecast, we'll have to take a look and see where we need to make adjustments in state government. So we have a lot of different areas that we cover. We cover the kind of the nuts and bolts of government, from Department of Administration, Department of Revenue, Minnesota Management and Budget, and we also have all the veterans as part of our committee purview. So we got a lot on our plate, but we're up to any task that gets thrown our way.
And what have you heard from your constituents in District 44A? What would they like to see addressed during the 2018 session?
You know, for my constituency, you know, the top two issues for them is education and tax and economic policies. So obviously the conversation that we've been having centered around tax policy, that's always a big deal. We were fortunate enough here in this last session to increase funding for our school districts. That always helps our kids. So we've done some really good things here in the last session. I anticipate that we'll have even more innovative things for our economy and our schools going into the next session as well.
I wanted to ask you about this, lunch shaming. You carried a 2014 state law that prevents demeaning students when they run out of school lunch money, yet we still hear reports about this happening.
Oh, yes.
Well, why do you think this is still happening, and how can it be fixed?
I would like to give grace and hope that the school districts just weren't aware of the lunch shaming change in law, but it's still shocking to me that somebody would take a lunch tray from a kindergartner and dump it in the bucket just because they were maybe $1 short on their lunch account. To me, I think that that's just opposite of what we as Minnesotans expect in our school settings. We're there to make sure that our kids have the food in their bellies so that they can be good learners and be good students, and I think that just flies opposite of what Minnesota is about. So I'm just disappointed, but I didn't think that I would have to have some consequences in place. I thought everybody would comply, but I think we're looking at some legislation to fix the problem so that it doesn't happen again.
According to the Legislative Reference Library website, you're the youngest of 13 children and raised on a farm in Atwater?
Yes.
What was that like, and has that influenced you today?
Oh, it definitely has influenced me. I had parents that every night at the supper table, my mother had a rule. We always had to eat supper, and so if my dad was in the field until 9 o'clock, we waited until 9 o'clock to all of us eat supper together as a family. And, you know, one, I think that was helpful for me to understand the importance of your family unit. But then also, two, we always talked about politics at the supper table. In the farm economy, obviously, government plays a huge role in what you get in the price of your commodity and so forth. My dad was a dairy farmer, so that's all dictated by the federal government, what you get for the price of your milk. The further away you are from Minnesota and Wisconsin, the more you get paid. So that's why you see a lot of dairy operations in California, because they get paid more than what we do here in Minnesota and Wisconsin. So, I mean, we talked about this all the time, and my dad was a public servant himself. He served on the local school board. My mom was kind of the woman that could never say no to anything that the church ladies would ask her to do. And so they really instilled in me the importance of public service, giving back to your community, and it was a great way to grow up. And I tell you, I miss it for Christmas time. I have only one son, and so I miss the hustle and bustle that you have with a large family. And you can imagine our dinner table with 13 people and then their spouses and their kids, and we had a dining room table that stretched from here all the way to that doorway, and then a tea coming off of it, and it's just a great It's a great feeling. The din is just deafening.
And before we let you go, I have to ask the new Star Wars movie, your thoughts?
Definitely a must-see. It didn't leave the cliffhanger that you were expecting, but it surprised me and how funny it was. I laughed out loud several times, and I felt kind of conspicuous. But yeah, great movie, great for, you've got a younger kid. My 10-year-old loved it. I'm sure it's not the last time we'll see it. We'll probably see it several more times in the theaters.